Thank you. I am very excited to be here. It's very hard to do this virtually, so I'm definitely going to do my best and try to keep it as engaging as possible. Uh, I guess I'll start. One of the things that I've kind of made a practice of for a long time is I really like to talk a lot and just about the recovery journey that I've experienced and not so much about um like all of the using and drinking and all of that stuff, because it's like, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, if you tell your story you're supposed to qualify, and I'm like, well, I'm here. And I don't know that I would be here if I didn't qualify, because I didn't wake up one day and say, this is the life that I want to have. Not that it isn't an amazing life, and not that I'm so grateful for recovery and the 12 steps, because it gave me a way to live in this world as a productive member of this society. And without it, I'd probably be dead. So I'm so grateful. But the recovery journey for me, and this is my story, so this is just my perspective of the things. And I always get concerned because I'm always worried that I speak about it in such a way that's like, well, why would I do the recovery journey? Well, for me, like, my recovery journey has a lot of challenges. It hasn't been rainbows and unicorns every single day. I've had some really awesome experiences throughout the process, and I've had some not so awesome experiences throughout the process. And I've had to learn how to manage that while not using substances to cope with my life. And that can be, for me, a little messy at times. And it's been so wonderful to learn how to do that without substances, but it's also been a huge challenge. This is one of the things that I've learned, like when I went into rehab, like the first time, and I don't think I quite got this for a while. It was like, this was really a lifestyle change for me, from going from the kind of life that I had where it was, I don't really care about anyone or anything outside of myself, into all of a sudden having to think out, like, about other people and consider their feelings and do all of that. I remember when I first went in to rehab, I don't know, I think I was 22, because I spent my 22nd birthday in detox, which is always fun. And I know, like, we have Christmas coming up, and, Thanksgiving just passed, and some people have to spend some time, in rehab, which isn't exactly the place that you want to be in the holidays, and that can be challenging. And for me now, when I'm like, oh, I spent my 22nd birthday in detox, it was like, I'm so grateful that I have that experience, because it taught me, like, one, I don't ever have to do that again. Like, I went there, I did it, and it kind of was not an awesome experience, but it got me moving forward in my life. And so, um, when I first entered, even like from the detox standpoint, I didn't know anything about rehab. I didn't know anything about detox. I didn't know anything about the 12 steps. I only knew what I saw in movies. And this was back in um, probably, I think, maybe 2004. So that was my first attempt. I had multiple times. This is just my first time. Um, but I really did not understand what I was doing in terms of the 12 steps. I remember very clearly they had the 12 steps up in this thing, both the 12 steps and 12 traditions, which, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't even look at the 12 traditions, because it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, it just was like, what are these words? Like, I understand the words, but I don't understand what they're saying in here. So I just kind of ignored that part. But I would look at the 12 steps, and I grew up, and this is a little bit about my past, but I grew up in like a religious household. Like that's just the way that I grew up. And I came from like a really nice family and all that. It wasn't chaos. It was really good. I had a good upbringing. Like I never wanted for anything. And so all of the steps that had the word God in it, I was like, I totally got this. Like I totally understand all of the things that they're saying. And I was like, I think I had in my mind, I had like half the steps done in the first 3 days, because I didn't perfectly understand what the steps were or what it meant or that you had to like do things. And then I remember the first time I ever went into a meeting, it was like, one, I was in detox. So I wasn't exactly in the best of moods ever, but I go into this meeting and people are happy and cheerful and hugging and like seemed like they were like kind of happy to see each other. And I was both scared and just kind of grumpy because that wasn't really, you know, um, I didn't understand that. I don't think at that point in time I had been happy and huggy, even when like, before that in a long time because, you know, I was off doing my stuff and I don't think I had any friends. So it's not like anybody was really happy to see me. And I wasn't exactly really happy to see them unless they were coming to bring me stuff that I wanted. So this whole world was like really confusing, and throughout the meeting they were saying things and I didn't perfectly understand what it all meant. And I say this kind of as a joke now, but this was like really what was going through my mind when they were saying certain words. Like they were like people would be like, "Oh yeah, I got a sponsor," or "I need a sponsor," and I'm like, this sponsor thing, like do you mean like I gotta go approach a company and get a company to sponsor me? Because this was the only concept that I ever had of that word sponsor, was like, Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Home Depot, whatever it was. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I immediately got a little scared and nervous because I was like, I don't want to ask someone to pay my way. Like I thought this was like supposed to be like this free thing. Like what is this? I didn't say anything out loud, but I was really confused and I was like, this can't possibly be what this thing is. And it took me a long time. Like I went off to rehab and I'm still thinking like I don't really understand what a sponsor was. I understood at some point, like a couple of weeks into it. So I go to rehab from detox and I drove myself and I walk in, and it was right before like a really big 12-step meeting. And the worst time, I obviously didn't follow directions because apparently I was supposed to be there a lot earlier, but I thought that I could just show up whenever. And the fact that I even showed up, I was like, y'all, look, y'all are lucky that I'm even here right now. So I didn't show up when I was supposed to show up. I don't even know that I knew that I was supposed to show up at any time. So I ended up, showing up right before like this really big meeting. And again, this was like, I kind of had a better understanding of like what a meeting was, but at the same time, not really, because I had just been into detox and now I'm in rehab, and now this was like, kind of out in no man's land, like public. I don't know. I was scared. I had these like people coming up at this one. So in the detox, most of the time they could tell who was in detox and they didn't like run up and hug you and stuff. Well, when I rolled up into this other one, they didn't know who I was. And all of a sudden I just had all of these people coming up, like strangers coming up and hugging me. And I was like, I am going to try really hard not to punch you in the face because I think this is like the most I think this is socially acceptable. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure I like it. I'm kind of like, please don't touch me. I don't know who you are, and you're talking to me nice, like you know me. And I'm like, I just got here. Like, what are we doing? So that was kind of those were my first thoughts. I was like, this is really weird. And again, this is just my story. This is my perspective on it. I can't change the way that I felt about it at that time. But it was all really confusing. And I sat there and I remember, like, because I still had a little bit of that vision of Hollywood 12 steps. And a lot of times when I think about it, I'm like, when someone talks about either being, addicted to drugs or an alcoholic, I'm thinking of the bum that sits on the street corner that doesn't smell really good and is in the gutter and, all of those things. Like that was what I had in my mind. So this was like, I just don't really feel like I belong here. But I started looking around the room and I like started seeing people that were kind of my age, which again, I think early 20s, I think it's kind of young. It's not like you're an adult, but it's still kind of young, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm seeing people that are kind of around my age. They're young. I'm seeing like some females because in my mind I never imagined a female. It was always the male bum, right? Like, so I was like, okay, I'm starting to get slightly a different perspective on what all of this is, and that maybe I belong, but I didn't really feel like I belonged. I I still really, I felt really confused the whole time I was in rehab. I did the whole 30-day thing. I ended up moving to that town. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. I ended up moving to that town. Um, I think I lived like 5 hours away, and it was a really great experience. And I do remember I got out and I was super scared. I was like, I don't know what this life is, but I know the life that I was living. I don't want to live that life anymore. And this seems to be like a different life, and like I could do this. And so I started really trying to figure out what all of this recovery thing was. And I was really scared. I still wasn't really clear about what like a sponsor was. I was starting to understand what it wasn't, but I still really didn't understand what it was. And so I only had me trying to navigate because I still didn't really have a sponsor or someone guiding me and telling me, well, luckily or unluckily, I don't know what it was, but I met a boy. And this boy had like a whole 4 months more than I did. And he was just the greatest thing ever. And he was going to show me the way. And the reason I know that is because of how much he told me he was going to show me the way. And that he was kind of like my savior person. And you know what? Who was I to argue? Because I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'm like, listen, if someone can help figure this out for me and tell me what the hell to do and what I'm doing here, by all means, please tell me what the hell to do. So I met this boy, and this boy also had this sponsor. And so I spent a lot of time with them, and I say that because they did in a lot of ways help me figure some of this world out for me, both in the positives and I won't say negative because they taught me a lot of lessons that I probably needed to learn, and not all of them had really great and wonderful consequences. And between these two, it was kind of like, I learned from there that there is a difference between the people of the program and then the program, right? So, like, what is recovery versus what is people? And I started learning that I had to separate the two. I had to still kind of figure out myself and who were the people that I needed to be around. And not everyone that comes in to recovery is like healthy, including myself. I was definitely not healthy, and I gravitated towards slightly unhealthy people because it was familiar. It was um I'm like, I get this I don't understand this healthy stuff, but I know I totally understand this world. I understand what's going on, and it was familiar, and I didn't have a whole lot of tools for me to know any better. And so it was a really rewarding experience in that. And this guy, it was like I had so many abandonment issues, and he was never going to leave me alone, and it kind of just worked. And so I did what any good person would do in my shoes, and I married him ultimately. And that was a really wonderful, rich experience uh, for me. One that it's like, how do I say this? I think it's really important in recovery. I had to learn how to be in relationship with other people and do it and deal with the consequences without reverting to substances. And what I will say is that relationships have been a particularly painful area of my life. And when I go into any sort of relationship, whether it be a friendship, whether it be a romantic one, for me, what I have learned is I have to be willing to deal with whatever comes out of that relationship. And if I'm not, then maybe I can't be in that relationship. And I say this because this was a particularly painful relationship, and we stayed um, together and for a little while. And we ended up getting married, and we also ended up relapsing together. And we there's a lot to how that happened, but the gist of it is he wanted to he kind of wanted to separate from the program. I wanted to separate from the program, mostly because I didn't feel I have spent my entire life comparing myself to other people. So it usually went something like this. I either look at someone and I say to myself, either I'm better than this person or I'm worse than this person. It was that simple. And I compared and I compared and I compared. And because of my upbringing, because of the fact that the first time using for me, in comparison, when I compared the stories to the other people that were there, I didn't feel like my story was that bad. It just wasn't that bad to me. Not in comparison to someone else's, because I was listening to the things they were doing, and I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention to what was really going on deeper inside of them that made them use in the first place. And if I had listened to the emotions that they were experiencing and the pain that they were experiencing, we were exactly the same. But I was paying attention to things like, well, I've never been to jail. I had never, there was a lot of never. So I had never prostituted myself. I still had kind of a roof over my head. I wasn't, rolling in deep with the drugs. I was like dabbling in my comparison. So I just, it wasn't, it just wasn't as bad as what I thought. Like I wasn't blacking out every night. I wasn't, it just, it wasn't that. And so I was looking at a lot of people's external and avoiding a lot of the internal stuff. I heard what I wanted to hear. And every time I heard what I wanted to hear, I chalk it up and be, see, I don't belong here. I had a little bit of what I would say a phase in my life, and I can check that off. So when he was ready to kind of separate, I was like, you know what? I think we could do this thing. I think we could just go off and live our life. And we're going to get the house with the white picket fence. He already had a kid. So that was like a lot of the work was already done for me. I didn't really want to have a kid come out of this body. So I was like, listen, that's great. You know what? We got the white picket fence. We got the kid, we got all of these things. And this isn't the life that I wanted to have for myself. Like, I didn't want to be in this like recovery thing. This wasn't like, I don't know that I had dreams of the future when I was a kid, but it wasn't this, And so when I felt like it was a good time, and I got to be honest with you, like my mom had no problems with me also not going to like recover. She's like, good. It seems like you kind of got your stuff together. Now you can just move on with your life. And we don't have to like call you anything anymore. Like, Jen, I'm an alcoholic. You don't have to say those things anymore. You can just be normal, right? She's like, I'm so grateful that you're like back to normal. So it was really easy for me to just kind of go on. And so when we relapsed, of course we hit it, and nobody, really knew. And we had already systematically separated ourselves. So we didn't have recovery people like watching over us. And we did end up like meeting up with some recovery people that they were also in a little bit of a relapse. And so we kind of had our like bond over that. And I don't want, like, without going into too many details, what I'll say is over the next year, things got really bad. A lot of those not yet. I still didn't go to jail, and I still didn't like ever prostituted myself. But what I learned from that was it wasn't that I was incapable of doing those things. What I realized was that it was just a lot of not yet. It had progressed very far, and I'm like, I am not above anything, doing anything at this point. And things got bad. And I found myself back in rehab with a little bit of a different perspective and outlook on life, especially in like the comparison world. I was like, the first time around, I had earned my seat, but I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that I had earned that. But the second time I was like, I belong here. This is where I need to be. Now I am scared and I don't know what that looks like. I feel like I was missing a lot of things when it came to what does recovery really mean and what do I need to be in it. And I was willing to do just about anything at that point. I didn't know if I was capable, honestly, of living a life without substances in it. But I didn't want to do what I was doing anymore. So I was like, I'm just going to it was like 5 minutes at a time. And when, we would go, the rehab that I went to, we did 90 meetings in 30 days. It was a lot of meetings. And it was really great. And I felt like I didn't want to go home. Because I didn't want to go back to, I didn't want to go back to what the whole family thing. I knew that when I left rehab, I was going to have to go live with my in-laws because we had lost our apartment, which I was really grateful that I didn't have to clean because I was in rehab. It was wonderful. So I was really grateful for that I didn't have to deal with all of the cleanup of a lot of things. But 90 meetings in 30 days was a lot, and I was really freaking over it at that point. I was like, I think I have gotten all of the things that I could ever possibly want, and I need to take a break. When I actually left, I was so scared that before I did anything, I went to a meeting because I was that scared, because I was like, I don't know how to do life. And here's the thing, like, honestly, at this point, things have gotten so bad that at the time, like, my brain was gone pretty much. I couldn't form sentences anymore. I had a hard time just communicating. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. I could barely stand up, even after 30 days. It was because it was just that bad. But I remember just being so scared that I was like, all I can do is just do more of this, whatever this is. And I did go live with my in-laws, and that particular journey, because it was like, I have something that I can compare it to and say, I think these were the things that I was missing the first time around. I don't think that I understood how valuable, like, community really was, because I wasn't particularly fond of people. I didn't like people. And so when you say something like you have to have a community, you have to have friends, I don't know how to be a friend. I don't know how to, like, insert myself into a community. I don't know how to, like, go out and do these dinners with people and socialize. And y'all talk a lot, and I don't talk that much. And I don't know how to do this. And so when people would say that, I'm like, well, you also say it's just a suggestion, so I'm not going to do that. What I realized, though, was that I did need people, and I did need to learn how to be in relationship with other people. And that hasn't been exactly a very easy thing over time. And a lot of it had to do with a lot of my internal struggles, insecurities, fear. I would rather reject the world first than have the world reject me. And that was kind of how I lived my life. And that was a very painful life. And so I had to start learning how to do these tools and really connecting with people, and how to start communicating what my feelings really were, which was awful. I hated trying to tell people what was going on with me because I didn't know myself. And so trying to communicate that is almost impossible when you're like, I have a feeling and I don't know what's happening. I don't know what it means. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know how to put it in a container that I can communicate with. but I just started practicing. And I just started listening to other people. How are they communicating? Oh, that feels like what they're saying kind of resonates with what I think is happening also with me. So I was much more willing to start listening to people, to start using like a community where I didn't feel like I have to, and I still don't. Listen, at this point, so I have over 15 years clean. I do not feel like I have to be friends with everybody, right? I also can listen to someone that I am not friends with and don't particularly like, and still feel like I can get something from them, from the message, especially if they're talking about something raw and something personal and something emotional. Even if I don't like that person, if they're speaking truth about how they feel, I'm like, dude, that's fucking awesome. Because it's so hard for me, and I can only imagine it's so hard for them, but I can use the community in a safe way, but I had to also learn how to use community in a safe way. Sometimes because it was unsafe. And I put myself where I was friends with people that I had no business being friends with, and didn't know how to set boundaries with people. And like people will still sometimes like try to get you to do things that you don't want to do for their best interest, not for yours. And I had to learn how to pay attention to me. I had to learn how to focus on me, and like not in a selfish way, like I want to be there for friends, and I want to be the best person that I can be. And I had to learn how to, and I think this is where, like, for looking at 12 steps, the 12 steps, like, kind of just started teaching me how to be in a relationship with me, how to be in that relationship with, how to like start communicating, how to be vulnerable, how to do that. And I needed kind of a framework of that. And I've gone through various different sponsors, and they each teach me something different. And, um, you know, I had mentioned the 12 traditions before. That really started teaching me how to be in a relationship with other people. When I really started diving into that, and it's like, okay, I can pay attention to me, and I can start learning how to pay attention to other people. And that took some time, and it was um, hard. And this is where it's like, this is a lifestyle, not just let's like show up and go on with our lives when we feel a little bit better. Because I thought I could just like, you know, um, even now, sometimes I'm like, well, I'm pretty good in my life, and I think I can separate, and I don't need this. And then all those little like sneaky voices start coming into my head again and telling me, um, a lot of times it's the I'm not enough. So I feel like I'm not enough. I feel like I'm not smart enough. I feel like I can't do this. And sometimes I need the people that I've created safe relationships with to tell me, Jen, you're good, you're amazing, you can do this. And I do the same for them, right? When they get into a bad state. But there's a lot that has happened, and I don't have time to go into it because I'm going to shut up here in like 2 minutes. But there is a lot that has happened in my 15 years that has been not great. Like I remember, this is just a quick story, and there's a lot into it. Please don't judge me. But like I had a couple of years clean, and I got caught up into a party one time. It was a drinking party. Originally there was sober people there to start, and then they were smart enough to leave when things started getting carried away, but I was having fun, and I stayed. And the next thing I know, I did this completely sober. I did not drink or do anything, but I did find myself taking off my clothes and giving lap dances out in the heat of the moment. And there was so much shame afterwards because I didn't want to tell anybody um, what was happening. And I didn't want to admit that I had gone down this whole road and I went right back. It was like I just went back into this old gin. I didn't drink, and that was the most important thing. When I felt that shame, and I was like, I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to, because I was on my way to a meeting the next day. Because I was like, man, I really need a meeting. I was on my way to a meeting and I was like, I'm just going to talk to my sponsor. That's the only person that needs to know any of this. Well, I got to the meeting and for some reason, I told people, as ashamed as I was about it. And I don't think meetings are for everything. I think that is, I don't think everything is for a meeting, but I think in this particular instance, I felt like I needed to share openly with people so I could let go of the shame of it. And I did. And I thought I was going to get a whole lot of criticism and judgment and that like condescending, keep coming back kind of thing. And what I got instead was a whole lot of other stories about people doing similar things because this isn't, we didn't, I didn't come here and I didn't, get in here just knowing all of a sudden how to like live life. Like sometimes decisions, I make decisions and I have to learn how to live with the decisions sober. And not all of the decisions that I have made have been what I would deem as having the best consequences of those decisions. And I've learned how to navigate all of that. I've been in relationships with people that I had no business being in relationships with. I'm not condoning the behavior. I'm not saying anyone should do it. I'm saying I did it. It sucked and I got through it sober, and I needed people around me to help me because I could not have done it by myself.